Welcome to part 2 of working with JSON using Java. So what we're going to be doing in part number 2 is we're going to be reading the information from the JSON file that we created in part 1. The name of the file is student grades, and what we want to do is we want to go ahead and parse that JSON file and display the information to the console. And I've specified the JSON format. So we have a name, we have an ID, program, and level. We have an address that consists of a street address, city, state, and postal code. And we have an array of courses that include both a grade and a name for each one of the courses. So that's the format of the JSON file that we're going to be reading from. So let's get into JGrass, which I will be using to go ahead and run this code. So the first thing you need to do is we're going to be using the JSON simple 1.1-1 toolkit to go ahead and parse this file, or decode the JSON. So that's the same toolkit that we used in part 1 of the video, and in order to use the toolkit, you need to go ahead and add it to your class path. It's just a jar file that you can go ahead and download, and that's what I've done is I've added that jar file to my class path. And there are many different JSON toolkits that you can use to parse JSON, depending upon what level of JSON file that you're going to be parsing. This is a rather simple JSON file, so that's why we're using the JSON simple toolkit to parse it. So I have our JSON read class opened up. So again, we're importing a scanner object that we're going to use to grab the information from our file. Then from our simple jar file, we're importing a JSON object, a JSON array, the JSON parser, and a JSON parse exception that may get thrown when you're using a JSON parser object. And then we're going to be, our information that we're going to be pulling, the address information, we're going to be storing that in a Java map. So we're going to import our Java map class. And in order to iterate over that map, we need to import our iterator class. So the first thing we need to do on a line number 15, we're going to use a try with resources to go ahead and open up our studentgrades.json file. Once we open it up, then we'll go ahead and create a new scanner object passing in our file input stream from our file. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a stream builder object that we're going to go ahead and save our JSON that gets inputted into that object. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the file into a stream builder. So we're just going to use the has next line, and then we'll go ahead and append that information to our string builder. So after we've read the file into our JSON in stream builder object, then the next thing we need to do is we need to start parsing the file. So the first thing we have to do is we need to go ahead and create a JSON's parser object. So that's what we're doing on line 23. Then after we create that parser object, we need to go ahead and create the JSON root object, which we're doing on line 25. And as you can see, what we're doing is we're casting the information that when we use our parse method, we're casting that to a JSON object. So what we're doing is we're calling the parse method of the JSON parser class, and we're basically taking the information in our stream builder and we're writing a toString and casting it as a JSON object and saving it in root. So after that, we can go ahead and extract For the first four items that are on at the root level, so those are the name, the ID, the program, and the level. So that's what we're doing on lines 27 through 30. We're basically calling the get method on our JSON object. And in order to use that method, we're passing in our key. The first item's key is a name, and then what we're doing is we're saving that information to a string, and we're displaying it using a printf statement. So we're going to do that. We're going to get the name and display it, get the ID, display it, get the program and display it, and then finally get the level and display it using printf statements. And again, what we're going to be retrieving are key value pairs, and we need to convert those to strings in order to print those out. So we've basically extracted our first four objects, parsed through them, and displayed them. So what we need to do is we need to get our address information next. And our address, if we go ahead and look at our file, it's in the format of a map. So what we're going to be using is we're going to be extracting that information and saving it in a Java map. So that's what we've done on line 34. We've created a map object, and what we're getting is the address information. That's our key. If we look at the information, that's the key of our map. So we'll go ahead and grab that information. We'll cast it as a map object, and we'll save it to our address map variable. And then after we've grabbed the information, then we can go ahead and create an iterator and iterate through each one of our map entries in our address map. So that's what we're doing on lines 37 through 41. We've created our iterator object, and then while there's additional information has next, then we're going to use the next method, and what we're going to get is we're going to get a map entry object that will consist of the key and value for that item in that map. So we'll go ahead and grab our map.entry object, and then what we need to do on that map entry object, we'll go ahead and call the get key to go ahead and get the key of the item, and then the get value to get the value of our key value pair, and we'll go ahead and print that information out. So that's how we would grab the address information. The final information we need to retrieve is the course information. So again, like I mentioned in the previous video, there is a JSON array object included in the our JSON simple.jar toolkit. So that's what we're going to do on line 45. We'll go ahead and we'll use the key, which is courses 4, to retrieve our array of courses. And we'll go ahead and cast it as a JSON array, and we'll save it in our courses in variable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a for next loop to iterate through the array of courses. So in order to grab the information, we need to create a JSON object to build the course information. So each one of our courses will get stored in a JSON object. So that's what we're doing on line number 50. We're using the .get method to go ahead and grab the item found at the position in our JSON array, position I. We're casting it as a JSON object, and then after we cast it as a JSON object, we can go ahead and use the get method on our JSON object to go ahead and specify the key, and that will go ahead and grab the value of grade and the value of name here. We'll go ahead, cast them as a string and save them in our string grade and name variables, and then we'll go ahead and use a printf statement to go ahead and print out the name and the grade for each one of our courses. On lines 56 and 58, we're catching the possible exceptions. The first is a file not found exception, and the second exception is a parse exception that could get thrown when we're trying to parse our JSON input file using our JSON parser class. So we will go ahead and actually run the class now. I'll compile and run it. So let me just hit on plus. I'll compile it. And it looks like the information has already displayed here. So let me scroll on down. We have the student name, John Doe, ID 123, program is web development, level is freshman, the address information, our key value pairs, and then we have our course name, and then our course grade that gets displayed. So again, what we covered in this video is how you can go ahead and use the JSON simple toolkit written in Java to go ahead and write a program that will parse a JSON file. So that's all I had for this video. So we will talk